Document. Part 1. The night sky over Earth was unusually clear, dotted with countless stars that seemed to twinkle with a quiet mystery. In the small town of Pine Ridge, Jack Thompson sat alone in his cabin, staring at the homemade radio telescope he had built from scrap parts. He wasn't an astronomer or a scientist, just a man who loved tinkering with machines and exploring the unknown. His wife had left him years ago, and since then he'd lived a solitary life deep in the Montana wilderness. But tonight, something felt different. The air was heavy, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Jack adjusted the dials on his equipment, listening intently for any unusual signals. At first there was only static, the familiar white noise that filled the void between worlds. Then suddenly a strange sound emerged, a low rhythmic pulse that didn't belong to any natural phenomenon. It was alien. Jack's heart raced as he recorded the signal, his hands trembling slightly. He didn't know what it meant, but he knew one thing for certain: humanity was no longer alone. Thousands of miles away in the bustling city of San Francisco, Sarah Bennett was working late in her lab. She was a programmer, known for her brilliance in artificial intelligence, though she preferred solitude to socializing. Her desk was cluttered with coffee cups and half-finished equations scribbled on scraps of paper. On her computer screen, lines of code scrolled endlessly as she analyzed data from recent satellite observations. Something about the patterns caught her eye. They were irregular, almost like glitches, but too precise to be random. Sarah leaned back in her chair, rubbing her temples. She couldn't shake the feeling that these anomalies were connected to something bigger. Before she could delve deeper, her phone buzzed with an urgent alert. News outlets were reporting strange activity in the skies above major cities around the world. People were capturing videos of massive ships descending through the clouds, their metallic surfaces glinting ominously in the sunlight. Sarah's stomach churned as she realized the truth. Whatever was happening, it wasn't friendly. In Washington, D.C., President Laura Hayes paced nervously in the Situation Room. The walls were lined with monitors displaying live footage of the alien fleet hovering over Earth. Military advisors shouted updates while scientists tried to make sense of the situation. Everyone was on edge. The aliens had sent a message, broadcast across every frequency imaginable. Their voices were cold and mechanical, devoid of emotion. "You are inferior," they declared. "Your existence is unnecessary. Prepare for eradication. General." Daniel Carter stood at the head of the table, his face grim. He had spent decades preparing for threats, but nothing could have prepared him for this. "We need to act fast," he said, addressing the room. "If we don't organize a defense, they'll wipe us out before we even have a chance to fight back." Dr. Emily Ross, a renowned astrophysicist, raised her hand hesitantly. "What if we try talking to them?" she suggested. "Maybe we can negotiate. Show them we're not a threat." Her words were met with silence. No one believed diplomacy would work against beings so clearly intent on destruction. As the meeting continued, chaos erupted outside. The aliens launched their first attack without warning. Cities erupted in flames as energy beams rained down from the sky. New York, Tokyo, London. All were targeted simultaneously. Panic spread like wildfire as people fled their homes, unsure where to go or what to do. The world was under siege, and there seemed to be no way to stop it. Back in Montana, Jack watched the news unfold on an old television set. He had always been skeptical of authority, preferring to rely on himself rather than trust governments or institutions. But now, seeing the devastation unfold, he felt a surge of anger and responsibility. He grabbed his rifle and packed a bag with essentials, knowing he couldn't stay hidden anymore. Whatever was coming, he wanted to be ready. Sarah, meanwhile, was frantically analyzing footage of the attacks. She noticed something peculiar. The aliens' movements followed a specific pattern, almost like clockwork. Each strike occurred at precise intervals, targeting locations with high population density. It was as if they were following a script, predictable, yet deadly efficient. Sarah realized this information could be crucial. If she could anticipate their next move, maybe she could help find a way to counter them. She reached out to Ryan Mitchell, a colleague who specialized in cybersecurity. Together, they began piecing together fragments of alien technology recovered from downed drones. The devices were unlike anything they had ever seen, made of materials that defied conventional physics. But Sarah refused to give up. Every second counted, and she was determined to uncover whatever secrets the invaders held. President Hayes addressed the nation later that evening, her voice steady despite the turmoil. "This is a dark day for humanity," she admitted, "but we will not surrender. We will stand together and fight for our survival." Her speech resonated with millions, inspiring ordinary citizens to join the resistance. Across the globe, people banded together, forming makeshift militias and fortifying their communities. Hope flickered faintly in the shadow of despair. For Jack, Sarah, and countless others, the battle had only just begun. The Xyloth Dominion had underestimated humanity, assuming it would crumble under pressure. What they didn't realize was that humans were resourceful, resilient, and unwilling to give up without a fight. Even as the skies burned and the ground shook beneath their feet, the seeds of defiance were already taking root. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, the Xyloth command ship loomed, unaware that their greatest challenge lay not in their weapons or numbers, but in the indomitable spirit of those they sought to destroy. Shorshan, document. Part 2. The world was in ruins. Smoke filled the air and the ground was littered with debris from destroyed buildings and abandoned vehicles. The Xyloth Dominion had struck hard and fast, leaving humanity reeling. But even in the face of overwhelming despair, people began to rise. They gathered in small groups, sharing what little they had: food, water, weapons. Survival became the only goal, and resistance became the only option. In Washington, D.C., President Laura Hayes worked tirelessly to unite the fractured nations of Earth. She knew that without cooperation, humanity would fall. Her advisors were skeptical at first, but as reports poured in from around the globe, it became clear that no single country could withstand the alien onslaught alone. The Global Defense Coalition, GDC, was formed, a desperate alliance of governments, pooling resources, intelligence, and manpower. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. General Daniel Carter took charge of organizing Earth's remaining forces. He had spent his career preparing for war, but nothing could have prepared him for this. The Xyloth technology was far beyond anything humanity possessed, and their sheer numbers were staggering. Still, Carter refused to give up. "We may not have their weapons," he told his officers, "but we have something they don't: heart. And that will be enough." Carter's first order of business was to establish guerrilla-style tactics, rather than meeting the aliens head-on, which would result in certain defeat. He instructed his troops to strike quickly and retreat before the Xyloth could retaliate. These hit-and-run attacks weren't enough to drive the invaders away, but they slowed their advance and gave humanity a fighting chance. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, Sarah Bennett and Ryan Mitchell continued their work on the alien technology. They had set up a makeshift lab in an underground bunker, shielded from the chaos above. The fragments they analyzed were both fascinating and terrifying. The materials were lightweight yet incredibly strong, and the energy system seemed to operate on principles that defied human understanding. But Sarah noticed something else: a vulnerability. The Xyloth devices relied on a central network to function. If they could disrupt that network, they might disable the aliens' weapons. Sarah shared her findings with Ryan, who immediately got to work crafting a digital virus. It was risky. If the virus failed, it could alert the Xyloth to their efforts. But they had no other choice. As they worked, Sarah couldn't help but think about the millions of lives depending on them. Every second counted, and failure wasn't an option. Far away in Montana, Jack Thompson had joined a local resistance group. They called themselves the Pine Ridge Fighters, a ragtag band of farmers, hunters, and ex-soldiers determined to protect their community. Jack brought valuable skills to the team. His knowledge of survival tactics and his ability to decipher alien signals made him an asset. Using his homemade radio telescope, he monitored Xyloth communications, searching for patterns, or weaknesses. One night, while scanning the skies, Jack intercepted a transmission that sent chills down his spine. The message was brief but chilling. Central Command Ship coordinates confirmed. Prepare for final phase. Jack didn't know what the final phase meant, but he suspected it wasn't good. He relayed the information to his fellow fighters, who agreed it was worth investigating further. Back in Washington, President Hayes delivered a speech to rally the world. Standing before cameras in a damaged government building, she spoke with unwavering determination. "We are not just fighting for our lives," she said. "We are fighting for our future, for the generations to come. We may lose battles, but we will not lose this war. Together, we will prevail." Her words resonated deeply, inspiring millions to join the resistance. Factories reopened to produce weapons and supplies. Scientists collaborated on new technologies. Farmers donated food to feed the fighters. Humanity was coming together in ways no one had thought possible. As the resistance grew stronger, so did its efforts. Guerrilla attacks became more frequent and effective, targeting Xyloth supply lines and communication hubs. The aliens responded with brutal force, leveling entire neighborhoods in retaliation. But the more they destroyed, the more they fueled humanity's resolve. Sarah and Ryan finally completed their virus, naming it Eclipse. It was designed to infiltrate the Xyloth network and disable their systems from within. The challenge now was deployment. The central command ship, identified by Jack's intercepted transmission, was heavily guarded and nearly impossible to approach. But Sarah had an idea. If they could hijack one of the smaller alien shuttles, they might be able to disguise themselves as part of the fleet and slip past enemy defenses. Jack heard about the plan through the resistance network and volunteered immediately. His experience with alien signals made him an ideal candidate for the mission. Though hesitant at first, the GDC leadership agreed to let him lead a small team aboard the shuttle. Their objective was simple but dangerous: plant the virus deep within the command ship and escape before being detected. The day of the operation arrived. Jack and his team boarded the captured shuttle, their hearts pounding with anticipation. Disguised as part of the Xyloth fleet, they navigated toward the massive command ship orbiting Earth. From the ground, Sarah and Ryan monitored their progress, guiding them through the labyrinthine corridors of the alien vessel. Tension mounted as they encountered automated defense drones and hostile patrols, forcing them to rely on quick thinking and teamwork to survive. At one point, Jack found himself face to face with a Xyloth soldier. The creature was tall and insect-like, its eyes glowing with an eerie light. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Then, without hesitation, Jack fired his weapon, taking the alien down. He didn't stop to think about what he'd done. He couldn't afford to. There was no room for doubt or fear, only action. Finally, after what felt like hours, the team reached the core of the command ship. Jack planted the virus and signaled for his teammates to retreat. But as they turned to leave, alarms blared throughout the ship. They had been discovered. Realizing there was no way out, Jack made a split-second decision. He stayed behind, holding off the approaching Xyloth forces while his team escaped. "Go!" he shouted, firing his weapon to cover their retreat. His voice was calm but firm, betraying none of the fear he felt inside. As the others disappeared into the shadows, Jack faced the advancing aliens alone. He fought until the last bullet was spent, buying precious time for the mission to succeed. Back on Earth, Sarah and Ryan watched the monitors anxiously as the virus spread through the Xyloth network. One by one, their systems began to fail. Without centralized control, their ground forces became disorganized and vulnerable. Seizing the opportunity, the GDC launched a full-scale offensive, driving the invaders back into space. Though the battle was far from over, humanity had won a crucial victory. The cost was high. Cities lay in ruins and billions had perished. But amid the devastation, there was hope. People began rebuilding, determined to create a better future. And though Jack Thompson was gone, his sacrifice inspired countless others to keep fighting, no matter the odds. Humanity had proven itself resilient, capable of standing up to even the most formidable foes. The war was far from over, but for The first time since the invasion began, there was a glimmer of light in the darkness. Arson Document, Part 3. The aftermath of the virus attack on the Xyloth Central Command ship was chaos. The alien forces, once coordinated and precise, now moved in disarray. Their energy beams missed targets, their ground troops wandered aimlessly, and their massive fleet hovered uncertainly above Earth. It was as if the invaders had been struck blind, their systems crippled by the digital weapons Sarah Bennett and Ryan Mitchell had created. For the first time since the invasion began, humanity saw a chance to turn the tide. General Daniel Carter wasted no time. From his command center in Washington, D.C., he ordered a full-scale counteroffensive. The Global Defense Coalition, GDC, mobilized every available fighter jet, tank, and soldier, launching simultaneous attacks on Xyloth positions around the globe. Resistance fighters joined the effort, using guerrilla tactics to strike at weakened enemy forces. Cities that had been overrun were reclaimed, one street at a time. The momentum had shifted, and for the first time, hope burned brightly in the hearts of survivors. In San Francisco, Sarah and Ryan monitored the situation from their underground bunker. The virus they had named Eclipse continued to spread through the Xyloth network, causing further disruptions. But Sarah knew their victory was fragile. The aliens still outnumbered humanity, and their technology remained far superior. If the GDC didn't act quickly, the Xyloth could recover and retaliate with even greater force. "We need to hit them where it hurts," Sarah said, her voice firm despite the exhaustion etched on her face. She pointed to a map displayed on one of the monitors. "Their central command ship is still operational even if it's damaged. If we can destroy it, we might cripple their entire operation." Ryan nodded, though his expression was grim. "It's risky. That ship is heavily guarded, and we don't have the firepower to take it down directly. We don't need brute force," Sarah replied. "We need precision. A small team could infiltrate the ship and plant explosives in its core. If we time it right, we can bring it down before they know what's happening." The plan was bold, almost reckless, but General Carter approved it. He assembled a team of elite soldiers, led by Captain Lisa Monroe, a seasoned officer known for her courage and tactical brilliance. Among the team members was Kale, a defector from the Xyloth Dominion who had sought refuge on Earth. Though many distrusted him, his knowledge of alien technology made him invaluable to the mission. The operation, codenamed Final Strike, began under the cover of darkness. The team boarded a captured Xyloth shuttle, its sleek metallic surface blending seamlessly with the alien fleet. As they approached the central command ship, tension filled the air. Every member of the team knew the stakes. If they failed, Earth would be doomed. Inside the ship, the corridors were eerily silent, lit by faint blue lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. Kale guided the team through the maze-like interior, avoiding patrols and automated defenses. At one point, they encountered a group of Xyloth soldiers. Captain Monroe signaled for silence, and the team pressed themselves against the walls, holding their breath as the aliens passed by. The moment stretched endlessly, but eventually the danger passed. Finally, they reached the core chamber, a vast room filled with glowing energy conduits and humming machinery. Captain Monroe set the charges while Kyle worked to disable the ship's remaining defenses. The others stood guard, weapons ready, their eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. As the last charge was set, alarms blared throughout the ship. They had been discovered. Xyloth soldiers poured into the chamber, their weapons firing bursts of searing energy. The team fought back fiercely, but they were outnumbered. Captain Monroe shouted orders, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Fall. Back. Get to the shuttle." Kyle hesitated, his hands flying over a control panel. "I can delay them," he said, his voice calm but urgent. "Go. I'll hold them off." "No," Captain Monroe replied. "We're not leaving anyone behind." "There's no time to argue," Kale snapped. "If you don't go now, we all die, trust me." Reluctantly, Captain Monroe nodded. She and the others retreated, firing back at the advancing Xyloth as they went. Kale stayed behind, his fingers moving rapidly over the controls. He activated a fail-safe protocol, triggering a cascade of system failures that slowed the aliens' advance. By the time they broke through, it was too late. The team reached the shuttle just as the charges detonated. A brilliant explosion engulfed the central command ship, sending shockwaves rippling through space. Debris rained down, and the massive vessel began to break apart. The team watched in silence as the ship collapsed in on itself, its glowing core extinguished forever. Back on Earth, the news of the victory spread quickly. People celebrated in the streets, their cheers echoing through the ruins of once great cities. President Laura Hayes addressed the world, her voice filled with emotion. "Today we proved that humanity cannot be broken," she said. "We faced an enemy unlike any we've ever known, and we stood our ground. This is not the end of the war, but it is the beginning of our triumph." Sarah and Ryan watched the broadcast from their bunker, their faces pale but triumphant. They had played a crucial role in humanity's survival, but they knew the fight wasn't over. The Xyloth Dominion still existed, and it would not take this defeat lightly. But for now they allowed themselves a moment of relief, knowing they had given their species a fighting chance. In Montana, the Pine Ridge fighters gathered around a campfire, sharing stories of Jack Thompson's bravery. Though he had sacrificed himself during the earlier mission, his legacy lived on. His actions had inspired countless others to join the resistance, and his name became a symbol of courage and selflessness. Across the globe, people began rebuilding. Homes were constructed from the rubble, farms were replanted, and schools reopened. The scars of war would never fully heal, but humanity had proven its resilience. The invaders had underestimated them, assuming they would crumble under pressure. Instead, they had risen stronger than ever. But as the celebrations continued, Sarah couldn't shake a nagging feeling. The Xyloth had been defeated, but their motives remained unclear. Why had they targeted Earth? What drove their relentless pursuit of domination? These questions haunted her, and she knew the answers might hold the key to ensuring humanity's survival in the long term. For now, though, there was hope. The skies above Earth were quieter, free from the ominous hum of alien ships. The war was far from over, but humanity had taken a crucial step toward reclaiming its future. And as the sun rose over a battered but determined world, people looked to the horizon, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Durchstarter Document, Part 4. The destruction of the Xyloth Central Command ship marked a turning point in the war, but it was not the end. The invaders' forces were scattered and disorganized, yet they still posed a significant threat. Humanity had gained a temporary advantage, but everyone knew the fight was far from over. In the days that followed, the Global Defense Coalition, GDC, worked tirelessly to consolidate their gains and prepare for the next phase of the conflict. In San Francisco, Sarah Bennett and Ryan Mitchell continued analyzing data recovered from the alien wreckage. The virus they had created, Eclipse, had done its job, crippling the Xyloth network and buying Earth valuable time. But as they dug deeper into the fragments of alien technology, they uncovered something unexpected: evidence that the Xyloth Dominion was not a unified empire. Instead, it was a fractured society ruled by a small group of powerful leaders known as the oligarchs. Sarah stared at the screen, her brow furrowed in concentration. The data showed that many lower-ranking Xyloth opposed the war, viewing it as unnecessary and cruel. These dissenters had been silenced or forced to comply, but their discontent simmered beneath the surface. Sarah realized this could be humanity's greatest weapon. If they could exploit these divisions, they might turn the Xyloth against each other and end the war without further bloodshed. "We need to reach out to them," Sarah said, turning to Ryan. "If we can communicate with the dissenters, we might convince them to help us." Ryan hesitated. "It's risky. What if they don't trust us, or worse, what if it's a trap?" "It's a risk we have to take," Sarah replied. "We've already proven we can fight. Now it's time to show them we're willing to talk." The idea was presented to General Daniel Carter and President Laura Hayes, who agreed it was worth trying. Using hacked communication arrays, the GDC began broadcasting messages directly to the Xyloth fleet. The transmissions were simple, emphasizing peace and cooperation. They offered amnesty to any Xyloth who defected and promised protection for those who helped humanity. At first, there was no response. Days passed, and the broadcasts seemed to fall on deaf ears. Then, one day, a signal came back, a hesitant reply from a group of Xyloth soldiers stranded on a remote outpost near Saturn. They claimed to oppose the war and sought refuge on Earth. The GDC debated the offer cautiously, but President Hayes ultimately decided to grant them safe passage. The defectors arrived on Earth under heavy guard, their insect-like forms causing unease among the human population. Among them was Kale, the former engineer who had sacrificed himself during the final strike mission. Though badly injured, he had survived the explosion and been rescued by his comrades. His presence was met with skepticism, but his knowledge of Xyloth technology proved invaluable once again. Kale revealed shocking details about the Xyloth homeworld, a sprawling metropolis encased in shimmering energy shields. The planet was heavily fortified, but the oligarchs' arrogance had left it vulnerable in unexpected ways. Their reliance on centralized systems meant that a well-placed strike could cripple their entire infrastructure. With Kyle's guidance, the GDC began planning an audacious assault on the heart of the Xyloth Dominion. As preparations for the mission intensified, tensions rose across Earth. Many people distrusted the Xyloth defectors, viewing them as potential spies or saboteurs. Protests erupted in cities around the globe, with some demanding harsher treatment of the aliens. Others argued that showing mercy was the only way to secure lasting peace. President Hayes addressed the unrest in a televised speech, urging citizens to remain united. "We are fighting for more than our survival," she said. "We are fighting for a future where violence is no longer the answer. If we let fear divide us, we will lose everything we've worked so hard to achieve." Her words resonated with many, but not everyone was convinced. Jack Thompson's name was invoked often during debates, his sacrifice held up as a reminder of the cost of war. Yet even those who opposed negotiations recognized that humanity couldn't win through force alone. They needed a strategy that combined strength and diplomacy. In Montana, the Pine Ridge fighters continued their efforts, now joined by volunteers from neighboring towns. Though isolated from the larger resistance movement, they remained vigilant, patrolling the wilderness for signs of lingering Xyloth activity. Their leader, a grizzled man named Harold Grayson, kept Jack's memory alive by telling stories of his bravery to new recruits. Meanwhile, Sarah and Ryan worked closely with Kale to refine their plan. The mission would require precision and timing, targeting key locations on the Xyloth homeworld to maximize impact while minimizing collateral damage. It was a delicate balance, but they were determined to succeed. General Carter led the operation, assembling a team of elite pilots and engineers. The fleet consisted of Earth's most advanced ships, retrofitted with alien technology salvaged from previous battles. Though outnumbered and outgunned, the humans were fueled by determination and a shared sense of purpose. As the launch date approached, Sarah felt a mix of excitement and dread. She knew the mission was humanity's best chance to end the war, but she also understood the risks. Failure would leave Earth defenseless, and the Xyloth would surely retaliate with devastating force. Still, she refused to give up hope. If they succeeded, they could dismantle the oligarch's regime and pave the way for peace. On the eve of the mission, Captain Lisa Monroe gathered her team for a final briefing. Her voice was steady but filled with emotion as she spoke. "This isn't just about winning a battle," she said. "It's about proving that humanity is stronger than hatred and greed. We may not have their power, but we have something better: our hearts. Let's make sure they remember that." The room fell silent as the weight of her words sank in. Each member of the team knew the stakes, and each was ready to give everything for the cause. As they boarded their ships and prepared for departure, a sense of unity filled the air. They were not just soldiers or scientists, they were representatives of a species that refused to be extinguished. The journey to the Xyloth homeworld was long and perilous, fraught with dangers both known and unknown. But as Earth's fleet approached the shimmering planet, bathed in the light of a distant star, There was a quiet resolve among the crew. They had faced impossible odds before, and they had prevailed. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. Humanity had come a long way since the first day of the invasion. From chaos and despair, they had forged a path toward hope and resilience. The final chapter of the war was about to unfold, and though the outcome was uncertain, one thing was clear. Humanity would not go down without a fight. Sir Document. Part 5, the Xyloth homeworld, loomed ahead, a massive sphere encased in shimmering energy shields that pulsed with an eerie blue light. Earth's fleet approached cautiously, their ships small and fragile compared to the towering alien structures orbiting the planet. Inside the lead vessel, Captain Lisa Monroe gripped the controls tightly, her knuckles white. She knew this mission would decide the fate of humanity. Failure was not an option. General Daniel Carter monitored the operation from Earth, his face tense as he watched the live feed. The plan was simple but dangerous. Breach the energy shields, disable key infrastructure, and force the oligarchs to surrender. Kyle, the Xyloth defector, had provided crucial intel about weak points in the shields, but timing was everything. One wrong move, and the entire fleet would be destroyed. As the ships neared the planet, alarms blared throughout. The Xyloth defense systems had detected them. Energy beams streaked across space, narrowly missing the human vessels. Captain Monroe ordered evasive maneuvers, her voice calm but firm. "Stay on course," she said. "We can't afford to retreat, now." The first wave of fighters engaged the enemy, drawing fire away from the main fleet. Explosions lit up the darkness as ships on both sides were torn apart. Pilots shouted updates over the comms, their voices strained but determined. Despite being outnumbered, the humans fought with everything they had, their smaller ships darting between the larger Xyloth vessels like swarms of insects. Finally, the fleet reached the shield perimeter. Using Kale's coordinates, they targeted a specific section of the barrier. A barrage of missiles struck the shields, creating a small but unstable opening. Captain Monroe seized the moment. "Now!" she shouted, leading the fleet through the gap. Behind them, the shields began to close, trapping some of the slower ships outside. Sacrifices had to be made, and everyone understood that. Inside the atmosphere of the Xyloth homeworld, the battle intensified. The planet's surface was a maze of towering cities and sprawling industrial complexes, all protected by automated defenses. The humans split into teams, each tasked with destroying a critical target. Captain Monroe led her group toward the central power grid, while others focused on communication hubs and military outposts. Kale guided them through the chaos, his knowledge of the terrain proving invaluable. At one point, they encountered a squad of Xyloth soldiers guarding a key facility. The aliens opened fire, their weapons cutting through the air with deadly precision. Captain Monroe's team returned fire, taking cover behind debris. The fight was brutal and chaotic, but the humans pressed forward, driven by sheer determination. In the heat of the battle, Kyle stepped forward, raising his hands in a gesture of peace. He spoke to the Xyloth in their guttural language, his voice calm but urgent. To everyone's surprise, the soldiers lowered their weapons. Kyle turned to Captain Monroe and explained, "They don't want to fight. They're tired of the oligarchs' cruelty." This revelation spread quickly among the human forces. As they advanced, more and more Xyloth soldiers surrendered, refusing to follow orders from their leaders. The tide of the battle shifted dramatically, with the invaders turning against their own rulers. It was a rebellion long overdue, sparked by humanity's courage and resolve. Meanwhile, Sarah Bennett and Ryan Mitchell monitored the operation from Earth, their eyes glued to the screens. The data streaming in showed the Xyloth homeworld descending into chaos. Power grids failed, communication networks collapsed, and entire cities fell into darkness. The oligarchs, realizing their grip on power was slipping, attempted to flee aboard their personal escape ships. But Earth's fleet intercepted them, forcing the leaders to surrender. General Carter watched as the final transmission came through. The oligarchs, once arrogant and untouchable, now appeared defeated and broken. Their voices trembled as they agreed to unconditional surrender, ordering their remaining forces to stand down. The war was over. Back on Earth, celebrations erupted. Across the globe, people poured into the streets, waving flags and cheering for the heroes who had saved humanity. President Laura Hayes addressed the world, her voice filled with emotion. "Today we have achieved what many thought was impossible," she said. "We faced an enemy stronger than us, but we stood together and proved that unity is our greatest strength. This victory belongs to every man, woman, and child who refused to give up." In San Francisco, Sarah and Ryan hugged each other tightly, tears streaming down their faces. They had played a crucial role in humanity's survival, but they knew the cost had been immense. Billions had died, cities lay in ruins, and the scars of war would take generations to heal. Still, there was hope. Humanity had proven its resilience, and the Xyloth dissenters offered a chance for a new beginning. Kale became a symbol of cooperation between the two species. He worked closely with Sarah and Ryan to rebuild the damaged infrastructure on the Xyloth homeworld, ensuring that the former oligarchs could never regain control. Many humans remained wary of the aliens, but slowly, trust began to grow. Diplomatic efforts were launched to establish peaceful relations, and scientists collaborated to share knowledge and technology. In Montana, Harold Grayson and the Pine Ridge fighters gathered around a campfire, sharing stories of Jack Thompson's bravery. Though he had given his life for the cause, his legacy lived on. His name was etched into memorials across the country, a reminder of the sacrifices made during humanity's darkest hour. As the weeks turned into months, Earth began to heal. Cities were rebuilt, farms flourished, and schools reopened. The global community worked together to create a better future, united by the lessons learned from the war. Humanity had faced extinction and emerged stronger than ever, but Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that their journey was far from over. Space was vast and full of mysteries, and the Xyloth Dominion was just one chapter in a much larger story. She and Ryan continued their research, forging alliances with other alien species to prepare for whatever challenges lay ahead. For now, though, there was peace. The skies above Earth were clear, free from the ominous hum of alien ships. People looked to the horizon with hope, ready to face the future together. Humanity had proven that even in the face of overwhelming odds, it could rise above fear and hatred. And as the sun set over a battered but determined world, the promise of tomorrow burned brightly in the hearts of all who had survived.